In 1402, Zhu Di stormed into Nanjing. He had won the war, but he still needed one more thing, a single decree. For that one decree, more than 800 people were killed. The question is not how brutal the killing was. The question is, why was a single decree worth 800 lives? There's an old Chinese saying, new emperor, new court. The meaning is simple. Every new emperor brings an entirely new set of people with him. The officials of the old court, no matter how accomplished, how capable, how loyal, almost never survive the transition. The decrees Zhu Di wanted had to come from one specific man, Fang Xiaoru, the most respected Confucian scholar of the previous court. Zhu Di ordered him to write it. Fang Xiaoru refused. Zhu Di said, "Refuse, and I will execute your 9 generations of relatives." Fang Xiaoru answered, "Make it 10. Zhu Di made it 10. He counted Fang Xiaoru's students and disciples as the 10th generation. More than 800 people died because one man refused. But the real question is not why Fang Xiaoru refused. The real question is why Zhu Di insisted he write it. To understand that, you have to see a larger structure. In China, a transfer of power was never a transition. It was a reconstruction. A new emperor did not just bring a new cabinet. He brought an entirely new set of people. The old court had to be cleared out. This was not a question of cruelty. It was the structure itself. To understand the structure, you can look at 3 layers. The first layer is loyalty. For a new emperor, the most dangerous people are not the incompetent ones. They are the most loyal and most capable servants of the old emperor, because such men will not easily change sides, and they have the strength not to. The stronger their ability, the harder they are to control. The higher their virtue, the harder they are to absorb. Fang Xiaoru was the extreme version of this kind of man. The greater his reputation, the more Zhu Di needed him to bow. The more he refused to bow, the more Zhu Di had to kill him. This was not a personal conflict. It was a deadlock with no middle solution. The second layer is legitimacy. What Zhu Di truly needed was not a subordinate. It was a proof. He was a usurper. His task was to turn usurpation into succession. And the officials of the old court were themselves part of the old court's legitimacy. As long as they remained, their very presence was a reminder to everyone. This was not a normal transfer of power. So he had to clean them out, not because of what they had done, but because of what they represented. What he was clearing out was not a group of people. It was the previous dynasty itself. If Fang Xiaoru had written that decree, it would have meant that the most virtuous man of the old court personally endorsed the legitimacy of the new one. That is why a single decree was worth several hundred lives. The third layer is the system itself. The deeper question is, why does this must clear out structure repeat itself over and over? Because in this system, what protects you is not the institution. It is the person currently using you. Your position, your power, your safety, all of it comes from one thing, the emperor's trust. Not the law protecting you, not procedure granting you authority, not some independent system recognizing you, just the emperor's willingness to use you. This means every official's roots are growing inside one specific person. When that person changes, the roots are cut, not because you did anything wrong, but because the source you serve no longer exists. New emperor, new court is not an observation. It is the result of a system. Zhu Di was not an exception. Almost every major transfer of power in imperial Chinese history followed the same pattern. After the Xuanwu Gate Incident, the new emperor wiped out the entire faction of the previous crown prince. After Emperor Jiajing took the throne, he used a long ritual dispute over his father's title to push out the most senior officials of the previous reign. Emperor Jiaqing waited until Qianlong died. Only then did he move against Heshen, because what he was moving against was not one man. It was another man's system. Every time, the same logic. a new master arrives, and the old master's people must step aside. This logic does not exist only in imperial power. When an organization changes its leader, the original core is usually rearranged, not because they are not capable, but because they do not belong. Your ability decides how far you can go, but what decides whether you can stay is who you belong to. In a system where institutions are independent of individuals, a transfer of power is a handover. In a system where power depends on individuals, a transfer of power is a rebuild. The first is continuity. The second is starting over. And the cost of starting over is that experience cannot accumulate. Every clearing out means that the previous generation's knowledge, relationships, and experience are cut off as a whole. The new generation has to learn the system from scratch, and their time is interrupted again by the next round of clearing out. So a system that looks stable is actually being reset again and again. In 1402, the day Fang Xiaoru's 10 generations were executed, Zhu Di got the legitimacy he wanted. More than 800 deaths, in exchange the beginning of a new dynasty. But the real tragedy is not one man's choice. It is that this structure itself has never disappeared. For 2,000 years, every time power changed hands, someone has asked the same question. The new master is here. What do we, the old ones, do now? This is not a multiple choice question. In a world where power depends on individuals, standing apart is not a position. It is a place that does not exist. You can refuse to take a side, but this system will not give you a place to stand.